I am here, yes.
Awesome. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Better now that we are getting a chance to talk.
My goodness. So we've got Kate and Calissa.
Very nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. So what have you been doing? What is all this?
This is our Teen Wolf podcast that we are doing because we love the show. And my God, the 10-year anniversary just snuck right up on us. I hadn't even thought about it until Calissa woke me up with a text and was like, hey, we should do a podcast for the 10-year anniversary. And I was like, it can't be that. Oh my God, it's 3 months away. So
let's get started. Right?
Just gotta get started. So yeah.
You're all friends through other on other shows, or you've met? How do you all know each other?
We met through Teen Wolf, actually.
Yeah, we go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the writers went to a convention called BiteCon in 2014 when we were doing season 4, and that's how we met. They were outside the green room, and
we were working.
Working
not
the green
just stalking
room.
the green room.
Yeah, we had just recently moved to LA, and we're pretty overwhelmed. We're from Indiana, and there's really not a city even close to LA anywhere near us. We were pretty overwhelmed, didn't have jobs or anything yet, and we were like, I guess we could go work this Teen Wolf convention. We love Teen Wolf. And then we ended up getting introduced to Will, and then I think we made plans to meet up at a cafe and just like chat about stuff, and we did that. And then we looked up, and it was like, oh, we've been at this cafe for 6 hours talking.
My goodness,
stuff.
7 years later.
Yeah, 7 years later, we're still best friends.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, see, awesome. Teen Wolf brings people together.
It does,
absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does. As it has right now. So let's dive in.
I have a general question, Will,
please.
Before we start this. Like do you edit this? Because I'm a lot of editing help here. Otherwise it's going to be a very long and dull.
Oh, no. It's going to be very exciting and awesome. So I have no worries about that. It's all my ums and ahs that I've got. That's the bulk of my editing, is just all on me, on my track, and just snipping out all the bad parts of me.
Okay, kind. All right. Well, it'll be an editing challenge for you. Who have you had on this thing already?
Jeff, Russell, Alyssa Clark,
Angela
Harvey, Matt McDonough,
Melissa Ponzio, Adam Fristo, Dino Minigan, Barbara Vasquez. Basically we're trying to get someone for every single episode, and so far it's paid off. And Haley Webb wants to be on, and Edie Mays wants to be on. It's good. We're trying to get as many people as possible. It's basically our wish list is the crew list of the show. It's just highlighting every single person. It's like, can we get everybody? So that's what we're aiming for. So yeah.
Wow. I'm sure there's a lot of goodwill for the show, because I think everybody enjoyed it and loved it. So that should help you in your quest.
Absolutely. That is the consensus so far. Everyone has been super excited to be on the show. And whenever we reach out to people, everyone's like, yes, I want to do this. And so we get them on and interview, and it's been fantastic. And we're just having a great time.
How do I watch the other or listen to the other ones?
What's that?
How do I listen to the other people's podcasts?
I can send you links. I can send you like a Google Drive folder with them all in, but we haven't premiered yet. We don't premiere until June 5th, which is the actual 10-year anniversary of the show.
Pilot airing.
Right. So we are recording as many as we can before then, just to have them, in the bank. And so we will be recording season 2 while season 1 is airing. All the podcasts are slowly coming out. So doing one a week, and thank you. It's mostly these two. It's honestly, they're like, Will, we got to work today. I'm like, I don't know. And then they make me edit some more, and we get people on and do all this. So it's really these two right here. So I'm just along for the ride. But
very good. You're a good team.
Yes, they are pretty awesome.
We love working together.
What's that?
I just said we love working together.
We do. It's been a lot of fun. Jumping back to my awesome segue, you're awesome too, Tim. And we have a whole bunch of questions that we want to ask you about.
Will's super good at segues. We pretty much leave every transition to him because of that.
Yes, I am pretty mediocre at it. So awesome. Well, let's dive in, shall we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, first question, Tim. How did Teen Wolf come into your life? How did you find yourself in Atlanta working on this show?
How did that happen? One of my very best friends is Joe Janier, who's the producer of the show. And I'd known him a very long time. We worked together for Roger Corman many years ago, making really awful films.
That's awesome.
But it was a lot of fun. And we had a lot of fun. We liked working together. And that group was like Teen Wolf in a way, because it was a great group of people that had passion for doing it and loved being filmmakers. And even if we were making silly alien movies or whatever we were doing, it was great fun. And he brought me on to Teen Wolf. I had lunch with him and Jeff one day, and to be honest, with the movies, I wasn't a fan of the films, the original films. I thought, they were watch. But I met Jeff, and he had this great mythology, and he was so smart and just had this brilliant take on it. And I was excited right off the bat to do it. So excited that I packed up my family and we drove to Atlanta so that I could work with my old friend Joe and my new friend Jeff.
Very nice. That sounds awesome. So that was a cross-country family move. Or were y'all were in LA at the time, or were y'all somewhere else?
No, we were here in LA, and
Gotcha.
It was filming in Atlanta. So, these are the ums that you'll have to take out a lot. There should be some program, I think, some automatic program that does that for you.
Yes.
I packed up my family. We were like, this is going to be an adventure. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. We'll go somewhere new and make this new show. And it turned out to be all those things. It was the best decision I could have made.
Fantastic. That's so awesome. Oh, man. That's so cool. So
the cast was pretty young when the show started. And for a lot of them, it was their first major TV role. What was it like directing them in the first season versus the last?
That's another Now I'm just really conscious of it.
Don't worry about it.
It was a great experience, and they like you say, they all knew at the beginning. Some like Tyler had done other things. He'd been a child actor, and he'd done a lot of stuff, so he knew what it was like to be on set. But for Dylan, I think he got the role via like a YouTube audition or something. Like they were just doing open calls for this role. And even though his dad is a cameraman, I don't know if you know that, but his dad is done a lot of big movies and stuff. So his family was in the industry, but he hadn't been an actor before. And I think on the very first day, what happens on a set is that you rehearse a scene and the actors stand in certain places in the set, and we know that's where we're going to light them. But while we're lighting, we have stand-ins. So the actors can go and rest. And anyway, he was standing on his mark, and his stand-in came up to take over his mark. And he was like, no, this is where I'm going to be. You have to find somewhere else on set to be in the scene if you're going to be in this scene. He wouldn't let it go. He was guarding his mark on the set there until we said, no, it's okay. You can have a cup of coffee, just sit over there, and we'll once we're lit and ready to go, you'll get back, and no one is going to take this spot away from you.
That's fantastic.
But then by the end, he's a pro, and he became a pro like instantly. He's fantastic, great, and he's just a naturally gifted actor. So by the end, you're working with pros, but also we'd gone through a journey together. And like I just said, how I packed up my family and went to Atlanta. Everybody had done that. There was obviously a Atlanta crew, but the majority of the cast and myself and Russell and Joe and Jeff, we're all from LA. And when we got there, we all sort of hung out together. So the cast hung out together. Both Tyler's and Dylan, I think, shared a house in the first year or two while we were there. And we all worked together during the week. And instead of going out and exploring Georgia and making new friends, we just hung out with each other again at the weekends. So it was a very, it was like, in America you have camps, right, for school kids. So this was like horror camp. It was awesome. Camp to go away and make a horror show. And
that is my dream.
Yeah.
It was like that. And it was great because everybody bonded. And anyway, to answer your question, by the end, after 6 years of working with the same people, you become very close with them. It's people always say movie set's like a family, and that's often the case. But this one particularly, and they were all super, close friends, and it felt like directing either family members or like my kids. They were just, because they were much younger than me. I was like the set dad. And often actually had to be the set dad. Now I think about it. It was very cool. I was very sad when it ended, as was everybody, but it was a great experience.
It's wonderful.
So you directed 35 episodes of Teen Wolf. Do you have a favorite episode that you directed, either throughout the series or specifically in season 1?
Well, I know that Will likes Night School, and that was my very first episode. I really do love that episode, and I actually did my homework for this because I was a little nervous when after you called me, Will, because I was like, that'll be fun. Yes, I'd love to see Will again and talk about Teen Wolf. But I then thought, oh my goodness, you know more about the episode than I do. So I watched it again. And actually watched a few of them from season 1, and that one I really enjoyed, and I loved it. It just shows you over time you do forget stuff, because I was literally watching it like I'd never seen it before. I was like, what's going to happen next? Oh my God,
that's great!
That's terrible danger. So I loved that one. I also loved. I had a good run in a later season. I think I did 2 or 3 back to back that I just loved all the scripts. All the scripts in Teen Wolf were fantastic, but particularly I did an episode set in World War II called
The Fox and the Wolf.
Called that, yes. And then there was another one right after that called Echo House. Echo House, what was it called?
It's Echo House.
Right. Why did we change that? So it was, I think we always referred to it as Icon. Will, explain this to me. Why is the episode called Echo House? Oh, that's the story theme. It's the echoes of the past lives. Right. Sorry, I'm explaining the show to myself as we chat. And I love that episode as well. This just, it was a gift for me as a director to do a show like this, because, Jeff is such a fantastic writer, and you just got such interesting episodes to shoot. Just every episode had fabulous scenes to shoot, things that you don't normally get to do. You have comedy, and you have romance, and you have action, and you have suspense, horror. And he would always say to me, like, what's the unexpected thing? He was always trying to make sure that he didn't get predictable or boring with it. And he never did, obviously, and he couldn't, never. Even if he tried. So I love those 2 episodes in particular, though. I really enjoyed making.
Well, going off of what you just said, I feel like Teen Wolf was definitely a show for everyone. It had romance, drama, action, horror. What was it like? What was your approach in directing comedic scenes versus very emotional scenes versus action scenes?
I can't finish that sentence. I'm going to start again. I think that one thing I do is I steal from other really talented, good people. So if I was going to do a chase sequence, I would watch movies that had chase sequences that I remembered loving, and I would really watch them, watch them over and over, and figure out how they had shot them, how they had cut them, and what made them so appealing and successful to me. So whether it was a comedy or romance or anything, I always would look to other people's shows just to see if there's something to steal from them. And Jeff also is a sort of a cinema buff, and it just has an encyclopedic knowledge of films. He would always, I would have to go away and like really think about it and research. He would just like, we'd be chatting, it'd be 3 a.m, and he would just be able to spit out all these Japanese movies or European movies that he had seen 20 years before that he remembered in exact detail. And he said, remember that scene in that Kurosawa film when the guy comes in and he would just remember everything about it. And I'll be like, I think I saw that, but I'd have no recollection of what happened. I don't even know if that scene's in that film. So we would chat about that, and that's it. That was another great thing. But having a showrunner and the writer who was very cinematic in their writing really helped me as a director shoot it, because they'd already put a lot of thought into the blocking of the scenes and how it could be shot and what would make it cool and everything. So that was a big part in making everything really successful.
Jeff was really good. I mean, he is very knowledgeable about storytelling in general, but he very much wanted to always make sure that the scripts we wrote were not easy, that when the director or the DP or anyone read them, they got what he wanted to accomplish with a certain scene or the sequence or something like that. So they were always written very, very sparsely, I feel like is the right word. They were very direct, and just they gave you all the necessary information to see what he wanted in his head, and
they were very
to provide it.
They were like novels, and he was so particular. He's the only writer I've ever known who, after we've shot the episode, will go back and put corrections in the script.
That's true.
Just so that it doesn't bug him in years to come when he looks back and think, I changed that line on set, but I didn't change it in the script. So the scripts for Teen Wolf are little novels, for each episode, and they if anybody wants to learn about script writing, they should read those scripts if they're. I don't know how you get them, but they should read those, because they would be very insightful in how a well-crafted episode is written.
Absolutely.
Very impressive guy, Jeff is.
So you mentioned watching other things, other movies, other TV shows to get inspiration for an episode. Do you remember anything that you drew inspiration from for Night School in particular?
Golly. Okay. Yes. So I love David Fincher's movies, right? So there's a sequence in, he did, what was it, Alien 3?
He did.
And I think I'm one of like 7 people that saw that film. But there's a sequence in that where the alien creature is running along a tunnel, a tube of some kind, and chasing somebody, about to do terrible things to them. And it ran like up the wall.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. When we rewatched this, Will literally started talking about that scene when we were watching Night School.
He started talking about Alien.
Really? Why? What aspect to it?
Well, the shot where the Alpha is chasing them down the corridor, it feels like that shot where the alien is chasing and then goes up along the wall and down back again. And I was actually lamenting that I wish we had the Alpha do that. It would have been very cool, but it just felt like that shot from Alien when he's chasing them into the trap. Where they're trying to lead him into it, and he does all the stuff. And I was like, that's what this is. This is our version of that moment. So
yes, it is. And we did actually, there is a version of it where it did go up on the ceiling.
Oh, that's so cool.
What?
That's so awesome.
There's a tunnel in that school. So there's actually only a hallway in that school. There's only like 2 hallways in that place, and one's got lots of windows on the side. And you will have seen there's a scene where Tyler and Stiles and Scott are walking down that hallway talking, and it's a very low angle because I didn't want to see out of those windows. I always like low angles, but I didn't want to see out the windows because it was snow on the ground. It was supposed to be summer. And then the other hallway is this really long hallway. And because I wanted to do that thing from Alien, it was actually 2 hallways that met, and there was a wall, and it wasn't our school, but we cut a big hole in that wall and made a really long tunnel because I just wanted to go on forever. And I also wanted to be able to drive a vehicle down it, chasing the kids, which is what we did. And we put it was like a very small pickup truck, and we put on the back of it the Steadicam operator who had built these extra long skids that balanced the Steadicam so that he could swing it up in the air and up onto the ceiling.
That's awesome.
For the creature coming at it. And so that's what so in the final version of it, it doesn't quite do that. It goes like up the sides of the walls, but it never went on the ceiling. And I think it was because when we were talking about in post, the creature going up on the ceiling and everything, we're like, it's so big. How's it not like falling down? If it would have been a real tunnel, then it would have been solid. But this is just like ceiling tiles. It's not a very strong thing. So how is that creature not just going to fall on its back and look a little silly, like an upside down turtle? So that was my lofty ambition, was to rip off David Fincher. No, that's actually not rip off, to honor David Fincher.
There it is.
There you go.
They call it homage.
Homage. There you go. So that's the background of that thing.
Homage is theft when you're fancy, basically, right?
Exactly. Fancy.
Yeah.
That's spectacular. When you started talking about that, it was blowing my mind because Will when we were watching it, he was like, this is just like that scene in Alien 3. And I kind of had the reaction that you had when you were talking to Jeff, where I was like, I think I saw that movie. Whenever, I don't know, years ago. I don't remember it, but yeah, that's amazing.
It's pretty good. Pretty good. Tim, how would you compare working on the shows like NCIS New Orleans and Salem to Teen Wolf?
How would I? Okay, I'm going to take a pause here and think about that, because I actually I'm not really pausing. What I did was I looked at your questions, which I was very grateful that you sent me.
You're welcome.
And I just was like, oh God, I've got to try and remember stuff. Otherwise I will only think of good answers or adequate answers once we've hung up. So I did write myself some notes, and that was one of the ones was like, what do you say about that? Because you never want to say anything bad about any other show. And now I can't find You're not asking these questions in the order that they were sent to me.
Yes, I'm sorry. We shifted them around because we each created a block of questions, and then we kind of interspersed them, so it's not just me asking six questions and then someone else asking. So yes, I'm sorry about not sending you a revised version. Yes.
Anyway, I can't even find what I wrote now. But anyway, how do I compare it? So obviously every show is different, and every show has its own aesthetic and its own audience. And you learn something from everything you do because you work with different people and everything. So, I've enjoyed, those shows and other shows I've done. But Teen Wolf has a special place in my heart. And if the question is, how is it different to film it? Is that what you asked? Or is
what's the, is the process on other shows radically different from Teen Wolf, or was, because those shows have more money than Teen Wolf had, especially something like NCIS. New Orleans, my God.
Yeah, sure. So, the thing that made Teen Wolf great, or one of the many things that made Teen Wolf great, was that our goals and sort of standards for ourselves were very high, even though our budget, was very low. You mentioned that it's tiny. But because we all loved it, the scripts were great. We loved the cast and the characters that Jeff created. It wasn't just one person's passion project. It wasn't just like a director or a writer that had always wanted to do this thing, and everybody else was just working on it. It became everybody's passion project. Everybody was really invested in that show, and it meant a lot to those of us making it, I really was proud of everything we did, and that we were able to make it so cinematic and visually much more, stylish and much more. It looked like a much bigger budget show than it had any right to look like, But it also meant a lot to, the people that watched it. I know you've all seen it, but every now and again, when you're working on a show, you are just like, oh, this is cool, this is fun, I'm really excited to shoot this, and you just sort of enjoy the process. But I started meeting people that watched the show. They would be tours that would come around the stages sometimes, and so you'd sort of meet people, and you'd see their reactions and how important the show was to them. And obviously they meet the cast, and they're the people that they really connected with. And it sort of dawned on me how important this show was, because it dealt with a lot of issues. On one level, it's just it's a silly little MTV show about werewolves, but it dealt with a lot of issues for kids, adolescents who were watching it, and helped them a lot. A lot of people would come up to me, and I'm just the director behind the scenes. They don't see me on the show. They don't have any connection with me. But they would just tell me, and they would get emotional and cry and tell me how important it was and how it had helped them with something, or they had faced something that one of the characters, represented in the show or something. And even years later, like I did another show after Teen Wolf ended in Toronto, and J.R. Bourne was on it with me. So, J.R. and I, we had lunch one day, and we were walking around Toronto, and this like horde of French kids like surrounded him, and I'm just laughing at him like, well, he's just sort of like uncomfortably in the middle of it all, and they were so overwhelmed to see somebody from Teen Wolf, because it meant so much to them, and they were speaking French, they couldn't speak English, and I don't speak French very well, but they were just bawling, and you just knew that it meant so much to them. And I don't even know if they'd watched it when it was first aired, and they were young, so they may have watched it on Amazon or Netflix or wherever, and seen it much later. But there's it come from that. I took it more seriously once I started seeing these sort of reactions. Well, I always took it seriously, but I realized that it meant a lot to people. So I sort of felt that responsibility in my own little part of it, to make sure that we never let anybody down.
Yeah. Since we've started our Instagram page, we've had a lot of people reach out to us with very emotional stories about Teen Wolf, and the big consensus is that everyone wants more. I was surprised by how many new fans there were, like 13, 14-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Do you think that if there was ever a revival or spinoff, would you want to be part of the Teen Wolf world? Would you want to return to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of me thinks that, I'm a middle-aged guy, should I be the guy doing it? But I love doing it. So sure, yes, I want to do it again. The MTV, they were talking about spin-offs and reboot. Actually, no, they were talking about rebooting it when we hadn't even finished shooting season 6.
Crazy.
So I'm very sure that there will be a reboot of Teen Wolf in the future at some point.
How could there not be?
We'll be very excited to hear that.
Yes, absolutely.
Some of the episodes that you directed had a lot of action in them. What was it like working with the stunt doubles and fight choreographers of Teen Wolf?
Well, we were very lucky because we got 2 of the best sort of stunt coordinators in the industry, Gary Stearns and Bryson Counts, and they were friends, and they do big Marvel movies, King Kong and any big action movie, Disney movies that people see. So they do. Did not normally do television, and I can't even remember how we got. Actually, I do remember. I remember I interviewed Gary on the phone pre-Zoom days, and I was laughing as I looked at his resume, because it was just one massive movie after another. And I had never met him, but I immediately just assumed I could joke with him. So I was joking that I don't know if your resume is quite good enough.
Oh no!
For micro budget MTV show. I mean, you've only done Thor and the Avengers and stuff like that. Were they difficult? I don't know if I've seen those. It's just ridiculous that we were even talking to him. But he had young kids at the time, so this gave him a job that he could do and stay, in California and not have to be traveling, all over the world with those films. So I think it just was the right time for him. And Bryson, who was always a great friend of his, likewise does all these big movies, and the only way that they could, it's hard for them to turn down a big movie. So, we would be shooting a season and one of them would say, look, I'm going to go off for 3 weeks to Australia or, Hawaii or wherever, but, the other one will cover me. So it was great for us because we got top level people. And they could sort of fill it in, and they stuck with the show because again, they loved it. They could have made a lot more money doing other things, but they really loved the show and the people. So we got very lucky.
Indeed, we were very lucky. What was your process for approaching each episode of Teen Wolf when you were given a new script that you'd end up directing?
My process. So the great thing that we had was that Jeff was on set with us. Sometimes you do a show and you're filming it, in New Mexico or Vancouver or somewhere, and the writers are in LA and they don't see the locations of the sets, and so it's sometimes trickier to take a scene or a script and sort of make it work where you are with the locations you have. And, I blocking it when I'm figuring out a scene, I have to figure out the blocking, where the actor's going to be. Like in the script, that they've got to walk in a door and immediately see out of a window that the bad guy is stealing their car. You have to have a set that allows you to do that. The great thing with Jeff is that he would be there. So we would walk around the sets and the locations. And he's such a perfectionist. He would recite. We'd read the dialogue. We'd play the different parts, and if it was supposed to be a walk and talk down a hallway that had to end at a certain line at a door, we would act it out. We'd meet over the weekends and walk it all through and everything. And so it all fitted very, very well because it was all constructed knowing the locations and the sets and what would work better. So we didn't have to sort of retrofit a script into places that didn't work very well for them. So we would do that, and you'd obviously do casting and so forth, and any additional parts that you need for that episode. And then I would always shot list to make sure you had a shot list and a storyboard, because the other thing about Teen Wolf is that you did not waste any time. So you got to make sure that you know exactly what you need, so that there's no standing around on set just trying to figure it out. A lot of shows, would do an action sequence or any sequence, and it was a big day if they had 30 or 40 setups, camera setups in a day. On Teen Wolf, we topped 100 regularly because we just had to be really organized and had to work at that pace. And I enjoyed it. I think everybody did, actually, because we would work at a really fast clip all day long. So nobody got bored because it was moving on to the next thing. And that was how we were able to, produce a good looking episode in 7 days, which was better than many shows who would shoot for 9 or 10 days.
That's very true. We were a very good looking show for such a short amount of time to be able to film, because you look at some other shows that have, it feels like a leisurely schedule. that's like, oh, you have 10 days. My God, you have 3 more days or 4 more days. And then it's like, well, we have 7 days to shoot an entire movie's worth of content that's going to be 42 minutes of an episode. But you're right. Everyone moved very, very fast. And there was never a time when we would walk on a set and be like, people just kind of looking around and trying to figure out what they were going to shoot. There was always a list, and JD was cracking the whip, and Dave Daniels got his guys already pre-lighting the next day or the next set. And it's like, we're just waiting to move on, and we're turning the cameras around and getting ready to shoot. And no one has time to go to their trailers because we're about to roll. And it was fantastic. We moved so fast.
We tried to make the trailers as unattractive as possible so that nobody wanted to go to their trailers.
Right, exactly.
You mentioned, I think it's Wolfsbane. You like the beginning of Wolfsbane, I think you told me.
Yeah, I love that teaser.
That episode. That opening sequence, the chase, that is the one with the chase, right? Where the car chase and into the Iron Box and all that. Right. So that one has the record. That we did we shot that in one night when I think we had like 118 setups in that one night. And that's the Teen Wolf record.
My gosh.
And also with that, we were talking about stunts. The other great thing was we had these young actors that were very athletic. And Tyler Hoechlin, I don't know if you know, but he could have been like a pro baseball player. Mm-hmm. He was a very, very athletic guy. And in that scene, you'll see him. He's running in front of these police cars that are chasing him. And that's actually him. There was never a double. It's entirely him. And in my mind, the two sides of my brain are going, this looks fantastic because I can see it's him, and it looks like we're going really fast and there's a lot of peril and danger. And then the other side of my brain was like, oh my God, it really is him. And there is a lot of peril and danger. And really could get hurt. How can we do this? But anyway, we did it and he was great. And there's a moment where he slides.
I remember that bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was his suggestion. I was like, oh my, because that's like a baseball thing, when you're sliding into, one of the, I don't even know baseball.
One of the bases,
you slide into. And bases.
And, sports. We all know sports.
And he did that. I was like, he talked about it. He was like, I could slide here. I was like, that's going to look great. And the director in me is saying, absolutely. The producer side of me is saying, you're insane, because there's 3 cars coming at you at speed. One of them's driven by Lyndon, another actor. I had no idea if Lyndon was a good driver or not. And then that was the Teen Wolf. We did it, and it looked great. And the other funny thing with those sort of sequences in that in those early days when we were in Atlanta, that we didn't have any picture cars. Normally you rent cars from a company that knows what you're going to do with them, and that they're okay if you destroy their vehicles. So with the early days in Atlanta, we didn't have that. We were getting them from like Enterprise or some rental company, and then we'd use them in these action sequences. And one of them, I remember, Kate, right? She had a little green Kia Soul vehicle.
Yeah.
And she had to shoot a shotgun up through the ceiling, and there was a werewolf on the top. I can't remember who it was. And so she shoots the shotgun, and it set fire to the ceiling of the car.
Oh God!
We're like, oh, I think it's fine. Just get a wet towel and put it out. And then the black car, that Derek's car, when he gets shot at by by Argent in Wolfsbane, this episode we're talking about. They're shooting. We really had people shooting at that car with, I don't know whether it was, I guess it's pellets or something like that, but that's the real actors there. And they were shooting pellets all over this thing. And again, I was just like, oh my God, what are we doing? It looked great. But that car, when we handed it back, I don't know if we can air this thing, actually, because I don't want to. I was maybe really upset. Oh, too late now. But anyway,
it's probably past the statute of limitations, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So the car would go. We sent it back, and it looked like somebody had taken a hammer to it and had just put 1 million dents in that vehicle. And we're like, but we took out their insurance. So I guess it was okay.
Well, there you go. As long as you sign for that insurance, it doesn't matter how you bring it back, as long as the tank is full. So, that's
right.
all that
Most important
matters.
part.
That's just courtesy.
That is courtesy.
And as we've discussed, politeness is very important to werewolves. So
politeness is very important. So,
yep.
Well, speaking of shooting all the great action sequences for Teen Wolf from, both in Atlanta and in Los Angeles, did you prefer block shooting to shooting single episodes at a time?
I'm not sure that's a very smooth segue, Will.
No, I said mediocre. I said I was up front the whole time.
Right. Okay. So, I now I've forgotten what the question was. So block shooting and all that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So, we did block shooting is more efficient. So when you shoot, we used to shoot 3 episodes at a time. So like I would, Russell and I alternated. So, the great Russell Mulcahy, who I was a huge fan of, by the way, I was very excited to meet him because I was a fan of his. So he would direct 3 episodes and then I would direct 3 episodes and we'd flip block. So that was block shooting. And the advantage, it's not a very noble advantage. The advantage, well, I suppose it's noble. It saves money. Mm-hmm. So, on our little budget, it was very efficient to do that because we would take all the school scenes from those 3 episodes, go to the school and shoot them all. And then we didn't have to waste time and money moving the company, moving all the trucks and everything back and forth. Literally the gas money to move all those trucks was worth it. Saving that money was worth it. So the benefit to me, I did prefer that because what that gives you is actually like more time. Because the time you waste moving, if on a day you're filming and then you at lunchtime have to move somewhere else, that's filming time that you lose. So by doing it this way, I would get a lot more time. And if I'm shooting a scene in the school, and I think about it the next day, and I feel like, I really should have got that extra shot or something else, or I should redo something that I wasn't happy with it. I've got the luxury of being able to do that because I'm still there.
Right.
So it was very helpful to perfect the episodes, for Russell and for myself. It's tough on the writers because you have to have all the scripts done in advance.
Yeah.
And, so it's, you often get into the situation on shows where, you're running, the production's caught up with the scripts, the scripts, you're shooting an episode and a new one starts on Monday and you don't have the script for that one yet. I'm not saying that ever happened on Teen Wolf, but it does happen on lesser shows.
Not once on Teen Wolf.
So anyway, block shooting would be my favorite.
Okay, cool. That's very cool.
No, we knew about all that because sometimes Will would be like, "Hey, you guys, I can't hang out this weekend because we have to finish the script in like 2 days." So
and it made him stronger. Thank you.
I am a much stronger person because of that. No, there was a time in, I think it was season 5, where we worked 21 days straight. The writers did, because we had, I think, it was either a completed outline or we were right on the cusp of completing an outline and then had to change everything. I don't remember what the reason was, but we had to throw it out and start over. And it really sucked because we, again, worked 3 weeks without a day off, just straight all the way through. And I remember this was maybe during the summertime at some point, and this was back when we were at 8500 Balboa, Tim, at our first campus up in the valley, and the AC would not be turned on for the writer's room over the weekends. And so it would just be baking in there. Money. Yes, saving money. So what we did is we would just get all these folding tables from the lunchroom and take them into the post-production area because the ACs were always on there to keep the computers and the servers going and all that. So we would have to just pile in there and set up all these folding tables and into a giant square and sit in there and work. And we managed. But hey, we got the outline done and the script finished. And I'm sure Joe Janier wasn't too upset with us. So, yeah.
Was that the Dread Doctors thing?
Yeah, that was when we were working on Dread Doctor stuff.
Yeah.
That was season 5.
I mean, was that why you guys had to?
No. No, that was, it was, I don't remember what it was. It was probably just, I don't know. Something didn't work in the story and we had to fix it. And we figured out what the fix was, but it wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh, just put in this line of dialogue. It's like, nope, this is a new episode we have to write. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. So, hey, you do what you got to do. You got to suffer for your art, and totally worth it. Totally worth it. So it was worth all the blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, speaking of AC, we technically suffered too because we didn't have air conditioning in our apartment. So we would go over to Will's on the weekends and just hang out in his air conditioned apartment because we couldn't afford an apartment with air conditioning. And so on those weekends, we were like, don't worry, Will, we too are baking.
Yeah.
But we love Teen Wolf. So
there you go.
All that matters. I like the think that you were in his apartment on the weekend in the air conditioning while he's at work.
There were some times where that happened, where it's like, hey guys, come over, and we're hanging out, and then you get a call from Jeff, and he's like, hey, what you up to? And it's like, nothing. I'm up to whatever you need me to be up to. And he's like, all right, well, the writers are coming in. It's like, all right, I'll see you in 20 minutes. So
Teen Wolf wasn't a job. Teen Wolf was a lifestyle.
Absolutely, it was, and it was
Yeah.
fantastic.
There was no such thing as a day off. And there was always this friendly rivalry between the writers' room and the production, because everybody felt that they had the harder time of it. So I would sometimes, walk in and I'd find Jeff like on the ground, sprawled out like a dead body on the carpet, right? And
I have pictures of that. of that. So yeah.
And he would just, and then in a humorous fashion, he would just be moaning and just saying how he can't possibly write another word. And that MTV doesn't deserve another script out of him, and all. It was just very funny. He was moaning like that. And then Joe or I, or both sometimes, because we both found it very funny, would just kneel down next to him and say, "Are you done?" Because pages for Monday, so you need to get back up and get in front of your standing desk and that really big screen and bang out some pages, okay? Yeah. And it was all very. We enjoyed those moments. It was funny. He would just roll over and say, "You bastards!"
It's true. It's true. No, he had that standing desk, and he just rolled it. Like he'd roll it out onto stage, and he'd be working. If somebody needed him, he'd roll it into the weight room where he'd be working out. And there are plenty of times where he'd be working out. It's like, Will, we're going to the weight room. It's like, okay, so I'd get the desk, just push it in and sit there and type while he's doing bench presses like some Greek god or something. And he's calling out dialogue. He's like, and then Scott says, "Argh!" And I'm like, he screams like, no, that was just me. So that was it. There was no off time. And you're right, it was a lifestyle, but it was so worth it. Worth it.
It's great. I mean, he was able to generate all those scripts, even though he was exhausted, and it was a monumental workload. Again, it was the only show where I think we got greenlit for one season. I can't remember where it was, and early on in the days, season 2 or 3, and they. I think we had got MTV to agree that we were going to have a hiatus. We were going to have like some months off, right? Everybody was very excited about 3 months off. I think we were going to have, and then he got the call, and I think Joe and I were there when he got this call, and they were like, "Hey, that 3 month off thing? So we're not going to do that. We're going to do like 3 days. How about that? Just relax, kick back, do what you want, go anywhere." And then we start up in 3 days, and so Joe and I were like, "Oh my God, Jeff might actually explode. Like we may actually witness spontaneous combustion because he was so he was going to go to Greece. He was going to go on holiday.
I remember. Yeah.
And we're like, no, none of that's going to happen. You're just going to. It's just like a long weekend. You're just going to take off Monday, and then start writing the new season.
Oh wow.
It was rough.
That's crazy.
It was rough because I do remember being in the writer's room when we're all kind of like winding down. It's like we're in the home stretch. It's like you see the finish line and everyone's like, oh, we're going to do this and that. And then Jeff just kind of shuffles in and something's wrong. He's like, so we're just working. We're just season 4, they want it next week. And it's like, but we haven't finished 3B yet. He's like, doesn't matter. Just, we're doing it. It's like, okay.
Bad news bears.
Bad news bears, bad news writers, but bad news production and crew and everybody. So, yeah.
It was a good problem because it meant that it was so successful that they just wanted it more and more. And I read a thing, at that time, they think this Variety or Hollywood Reporter, one of the trades, had on the front cover, they said that MGM, which owned the rights to the Teen Wolf title, MGM is, which had been struggling for many years, suddenly was back in business, all thanks to James Bond and Teen Wolf.
Teen Wolf. I remember that.
So it saved MGM, so it was really, super successful for everybody involved.
No, it was great. We all got to work on it for a long time. It was wonderful. Employment is amazing. So, yeah.
That's kind of crazy for it to be, mentioned in the same headline as something like James Bond, which is, one of the most profitable IPs of all time. And then it's like, and this MTV show that was adapted from an 80s teen movie that like half the audience either hasn't seen or doesn't like.
Yes.
Those two things, both of those things. That's crazy.
Rarefied air. So
yeah.
Awesome. It was great. It was great.
I'm actually going to segue into a different question than the one we originally had next, because you mentioned a little bit some of the tension between Jeff and MTV. And Jeff was actually the first person that we interviewed for this podcast. And one of the things that he talked about was a particular scene in, it's in
Wolfsbane.
In Wolfsbane, yeah. Mm-hmm. A particular scene in Wolfsbane with Derek, Styles, and Danny. And that MTV was really opposed to doing that scene. And he said, they weren't sure if they wanted Derek to be funny like that, which is kind of the first time we see Derek being funny. And then I think there was a little bit of a subtext that like the scene is just super gay and we're not sure how comfortable we are with that. But it was really interesting to hear about sort of that behind the scenes tension. So do you have any memories of shooting that particular scene, or what's your perspective on it as the director?
I don't know that I don't know if I recall any pushback from MTV. I mean, either I've forgotten it or I wasn't aware. But actually, it is dawning on me now. I think there was some conversation about that because we were going to shoot it. Oh yes, we were going. As if I've not spoken in the last 30 seconds. So I do remember now that there was a conversation about it that they weren't keen on it. So we talked about maybe we'll just shoot it and put it in the episode anyway and see if they like it when it's already shot. Because they can, in editing you can change anything, you can take it out, reshoot something else. So we did talk about just doing that. I didn't understand why they would push back against it. I mean, that was the great thing about the show, that it just embraced everybody, and the world in the show was always, how the world should be, not necessarily how it is, in terms of any sort of social issues, bullying and racism, homophobia, and anything like that, and so that was another thing that we were all very proud of the show for being, and depicting a better world, for everybody to live in. In terms of me directing that scene, I remember that it was, I think Tyler Hoechlin was very excited to do it because it was, he's always is the brooding Derek Hale, who is very serious and foreboding most of the time. So I think he was excited because he got to do something different and be in a comedy sketch sort of thing. And Dylan's obviously always fantastic at that comedy, and they obviously enjoyed working together and doing a comedy thing. So my memory of that would be keeping everybody from not laughing, because if you're in a shot, we can see everybody, and then Dylan does something and Tyler finds it funny and Tyler laughs at Dylan. I'm like, I can still see you. Like,
you're in frame.
Yeah, you're in front of the camera right now. And the same thing for Dylan. If he's got his back in that scene, if I remember, he's got his back to. It's him and Keanu in the front, right, and Derek's in the back. So that's the danger in comedy scenes. Actually, is that you don't want the people on camera to find it funny and to find themselves funny. That's always a problem. And then it was very, as all these scenes are, it was very well written. It was funny. So keeping everybody from cracking up is probably my strongest memory of that.
Excellent.
Finstock and Stiles are definitely two of the funniest characters on the show. We were curious about how much improv happened with them, and as a director, how do you feel about improv?
I am not a huge fan of improv. So on the whole, it's something I prefer actors not to do, because I always feel like the writer, and Jeff is a great writer, so I always feel like they've written the funnier lines because they've sat down and really honed it and thought it through and pared it down until until it really works. And often it's less funny if people add to it, or the scene doesn't end, just sort of drifts on and there's no solid punchline, or they're not thinking about it in terms of the end of one scene has to set up what happens immediately in the beginning of the next scene. So there's that. Dylan, though, is really funny. And there were a lot of times there were things that he would say that would end up in the show. You always do this, you always sort of ask actors to do it as scripted and then okay, do one where you're ad-libbing or whatever. And Dylan, was really able to spit out lines. I mean, he was, I think he even talked to Jeff about writing an episode. There was conversations about him because he's such a talented person, and I think he would easily write something great in the future himself. And I think we talked about him writing on Teen Wolf at some point. Orny came from the background of being a stand-up comic, so he was great. He was perfect in that role. Jeff had seen him in a comedy club and just saw him as the coach. From that, so he was great in it, but he didn't initially. Obviously, he got up to speed pretty quickly, but initially, he had no idea about doing takes the same way each time. He's an editor's nightmare because we would light for him to be at the front of the classroom, and he's going to say his lines there, and then take two, he walks to the back of the classroom and sits down in a chair. And I'm like, well, oh my God, you're not even on camera at this point. So, there was a little bit of a learning curve there. But he was great in the role. On those two, I probably would give a little slack for ad-libbing, but on the whole, not my favorite thing. And for instance, me right now, I would be a lot more entertaining and funnier if I was scripted and if Jeff had written.
No, this is wonderful.
This is great.
No, this is totally wonderful.
Do you have any fun memories from season 1 that you'd like to share?
Fun memory? Well, there's many, because it was just, I said earlier on, it was great. It was like going away on camp with all these people, and everybody just really bonded. Many things. Often it's the things that are just disasters that happen that you're like, oh dear. How are we going to fix this? I do remember that my kids were with me a lot, all the time. So they grew up on that set, and so Dylan and Tyler were they were like 4 or 5 years older than my kids, and they were like their older brothers. They would all hang out together, and like Dylan and Tyler. We had an episode where we were on an ice rink, and Dylan and Tyler taught my kids to ice skate, and they played lacrosse together. I think my youngest daughter at the time would just treat them like they were her servants or her. Would just send them off. Like she would hurl. They had one. I think she told me this. I was asking her about this the other day. She said we only had one. Dylan said, "Let's play lacrosse," and then she was like, "We only have one lacrosse stick, Dylan." And she was like, "These boys, they're not so smart. How are we going to play?" And so the game they evolved was that she would just basically hurl the ball, and Dylan and Tyler, as dogs, would go and search for it in the bush. So like they occupied them, they kept themselves, entertained on the shoot days. But I do remember that another thing, they taught them ice skating, but they also taught them bad language. And on the actors are wired, and then between takes, normally you're wearing headphones, and normally they get turned down so you don't hear what they're saying. My kids are on set with me, and they're sitting at the Video Village, and they're watching the cameras get set up, and they're wearing headsets, so they're hearing everything. And many times I would hear Dylan and Tyler say something or laugh or joke or say, use some bad language. And I would look at them, and then they would immediately look at me and like busted. And they were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, Tim, I'm so sorry. Because my kids are now laughing, and they've now learned a new word. And so if Dylan and Tyler ever watch this, I thank you both very much for teaching my daughters how to swear.
Teen Wolf pays off in many unexpected ways.
You talked about some very iconic scenes that you shot in the first season. Which one is your favorite?
My favorite scene of the first season. Gosh, so many. I'd have to review it all. But the ones that I remember, I really enjoyed that were very unusual. I enjoyed that action sequence. I always loved doing action. So that thing that we did with Tyler being chased and being shot at and all that stuff, that was a great fun night. But the things that I think were the really interesting that we got to shoot on Teen Wolf that you never get to shoot on other shows were sort of the weird, mentally confusing sort of scenes. Like there's a scene there in one of the episodes there with Colton on a doctor's bench, and and it's Tyler's dad as playing the doctor, right? So he's pulling this vine or something out of his neck. I remember doing that, and then he's screaming, and he's got a strap on his chin, I think, and there's all this sort of flowers and blood. I remember like pouring blood all over these flowers on the ground and everything, and so those were really they're weird and they're funny, fun to do, and it's always the thing in shows that the scary scenes or the horror scenes, which hopefully make somebody watching the show just like, not take their eyes off it or take their eyes away because they can't watch because it's scary or whatever. When you're doing them, they're actually the sort of the funny scenes to do. Everybody's laughing, because it's in real life, it seems ridiculous. But those were great fun. And I remember doing lots of scenes with Colton. Actually, Colton always got tortured a lot. I seem to remember a torture quite a few times. I remember getting a snake or something out of his mouth. He had to cough up a snake, I think.
He had a snake come out of his eye socket.
And
his eyeball goes like that. It looks fit. I'm a big horror movie freak, and I love that scene.
It's a great scene.
You see, that shows you what a good actor he is, that he could act a snake out of his eye.
Yeah.
And, we didn't have much money for CG, so a lot of it was practical.
It looks awesome.
It does look awesome. So, Tim, as I've said earlier in this interview, I think Night School is my favorite episode of season 1. Was it difficult finding ways to keep the story in the episode propulsive despite essentially being stranded with these characters in one location?
that was a great script. So I don't think I ever had any fears about that, just because it's like a ticking time bomb. It's just relentless. It's relentless. It's like the shark in Jaws. Like they're only on a little boat, and they wanted a bigger boat, but they couldn't have one. And it's you don't ever question yourself like, I wish they'd had maybe a jet ski just to mix it up. You don't care about that because you got great characters that you do care about. The actors are great, the characters are really fun, and you're all invested in those guys. So I don't think I worried about that, because it just, in the script, it was there was no like boring scene. There was no dull moment where nothing was happening. I think I had concerns perhaps about the geography of the school and just making sure that it all made sense to anybody watching. And I think when you're directing something, you possibly think about that stuff more than it really matters, because I don't think people watching really care too much about that. They're just watching the scenes. And but I was a bit worried, because even though it was a big school, it was an abandoned school, a closed down school, which my children told me afterwards that they were actually terrified of when we were there, and I made them go there often.
No.
It was because it was a big abandoned school, but we only could shoot certain sections. So there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's only these 2 hallways, and so you see the one hallway over and over again. But I thought it just looked so great that it didn't bother me. It just looked eerie, and because we'd made it extra long, we just had these sort of lights coming in from certain doorways and stuff. It just looked spooky. And it was one of those situations where I'd walked through every scene with Jeff, and he's, so helpful with like how he had imagined scenes playing out. And we were like, oh, we could do this here. And then he would, if he liked an idea or a piece of that school or as a location, he would adjust the script to work, for that and everything. To answer your question, I didn't worry about it being the nature of the story being, propulsive or being engaging, just because the script was just so strong.
Awesome. Excellent.
Do you like the challenge of filming a more like bottle episode that's one spot, or do you like the variety of going to different locations when shooting an episode?
I think that, it's just variety, and that's a great thing you had with Teen Wolf. You didn't ever have to do the same thing over and over again, and even because it has all these great elements. You got horror and comedy because they go hand in hand, and you've got romance, and you've got drama and action, suspense. So you had all these things all the time in different mixes of them in every episode. And when you're shooting, often what happens when you're shooting, you're on location, and you're initially like excited because the place looks great, and then you realize, oh, it's going to look really great at night, which means I'm not going to get any sleep because I'm going to be filming all night. And then after a few nights of it, you're like, oh my God, get me back to the stage. So then you go back to the stage, and you're like, oh, thank God, you're safe. Like it doesn't matter if it rains. Actually, did on our stages, because we had stages where we had tin roofs, which we didn't realize would be really loud when it rained. It was, you just had this great variety all the time with that show, which you don't get necessarily on other shows.
Night School, like you said, takes place entirely at night. It's the name and everything. Was it hard to shoot an episode that's like dark the entire time? Like visually dark?
No, because we realized early on that werewolves do not look great in the daylight. So you quickly adjust to Teen Wolf being a nocturnal show, and we all have to become nocturnal. So you're just working nights. I remember doing 3 weeks of nights in the woods in Atlanta. And it had snowed, so the ground's really cold and icy and uncomfortable to stand on after 12 hours. But ultimately, it just looks better, So you just you wouldn't do it if you weren't enthusiastic about the end result. And I would always, as a human being, I'll be like, maybe I'd prefer to be in bed, or I'd prefer to be filming on somewhere. But when you're in the film industry, you look at the monitors and you think that looks spectacular. We made it harder on ourselves. I was always, people would groan in production meetings because we'd read scenes and stuff, and I'd be like, and it's raining. And people were like, oh God, do we have? I'd be like, get it out now, because yes, we are going to do it because it will just be cool. So, even though we're in California, Beacon Hills has got its own microclimate, and it was always up and it always rained. And even our daylight, we made daylight. We were like, this is like daylight in Norway, somewhere where they have a very low sun, and we never had, it was never a bright, sunny school. It was always, even at noon, dark and creepy.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for that suggestion, for all the rain suggestions, because I love the Teen Wolf rain scenes. They're always so
beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are fantastic. Tim, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Will.
Tim, for our listeners who don't know, what is the rehearsal process like on a typical episode of Teen Wolf?
The rehearsal process? So I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, yes. What was the rehearsal process like? Like for the scene, like going into scenes on a typical episode of Teen Wolf?
Very, very quick. Because again, that was stuff that we didn't want to, you used to do some shows and everybody's at a more leisurely pace and you've got time to really work it out. But, I would always have a plan, and it might change, but I would always have a plan of like where I wanted the actors to be, and when people are moving on what lines and all this sort of stuff, and we didn't spend too much time diverging from that, just because we needed to get shooting. You got a successful shooting day is all like about momentum. You got to get going quickly. Right. And keep going. So what we would do if we say, for instance, had a guest actor in that wasn't familiar with the show, then after we blocked it, I might take the actors off set so the crew can still work, light it and set the cameras up and everything, and have people run that scene, so they get familiar with it. Mm-hmm. If it was action stuff, ideally, we would rehearse, the day before or days before with the stunt coordinators, so that the fight is all figured out, and then the stunt coordinators film it, on an iPad or their phone or whatever, and show me the fight, and then we would, talk about it and say, okay, so let's add another few punches here, or take out a kick here, or say that we'll insert a line here, so they have to like stop for a second, because we always wanted, again, the fights, we would always, I think they were better on Teen Wolf than on some shows, because we would always want to have them be representative of the character. So like this character doesn't suddenly know jiu-jitsu or something. Like this character is, has never had any formal training, so they're going to be scrappy when they fight. And this other person that they're fighting, is part leopard, so they're going to they're going to have certain skills that other people would not have. So and again, Jeff with the writing, dialogue would happen during a fight scene, so it's not just punch until we're bored of it and then talk again. It was sort of all integrated, so that stuff needed more rehearsal time, because that's choreography. You have to learn the choreography.
Yeah.
So, you've kind of told us your approach to how you start directing it, leading up to directing an episode. What was like a typical day like once you've started directing?
So you arrive at 6 p.m. when the sun's going down, and everybody says good morning to you, because in our world, it's morning. And you get served breakfast by Laurent at the catering truck.
Yes.
So you're eating your meals are all out of whack with the rest of the world. And then you look at the special effects makeup stuff and you're like, more blood. It needs more blood. Everything needs more blood. You just add more blood to everything. Then you test the rain towers because it's always raining, like I said. So there would be, they'd test those and no more, heavier rain. And so, we'd order more water trucks. I think we went through one night, like 9 water trucks.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Because we had to, it was on a later episode. It was a scene on a lacrosse field. There were horses and
with
all
Kira?
sorts of stuff going on. It was just torrential. That field was a mud pit by the end of it. So you test the water things, make sure that they're working well. Then you start shooting some massive complicated action sequence that on any other show would be 2 or 3 days worth of filming. And we're going to do it by lunch. And then lunch rolls around at midnight. And suddenly you've got 6 hours left of shooting and the sun's coming up and you're scrambling like mad. So you abandon all your previous plans and just shoot as much as you can, as quickly as you can. And then even when the sun is coming up, I'm screaming at everybody that we can still keep filming because if we look down, we can't tell that the sky is blue. And then you would go home, you'd scrape ice off your car because it was freezing, and go home, collapse, get up again, and do it all over again every night for 6 years.
Well,
what a job.
It came out beautiful, so.
Well, you know what, though? I loved every minute of it. And I'm obviously making a joke about it, but, everybody did. It was fantastic.
Well, we're still talking about it 10 years later. So,
Yes, we are.
And we get many messages every day being like, could you please tell MTV that we would like a season 7?
Just call up MTV. Tell them more, please.
Yeah, Hey, MTV, it's us.
It's us
yes. Again. It'll happen.
So in addition to directing, you were an executive producer on Teen Wolf. What did that entail?
That meant I got a better parking spot. And it basically meant that you are there all the time. So even if I'm not directing an episode, I'd still be there. And you're either working on future episodes or basically helping out the showrunner, Jeff, in this case. So you're helping him make sure that while he's busy writing, that the rest of the show is happening and being shot the way he would like. That locations we're picking are things that he would like, that sets we're building are in the vein of the rest of the show. Because sometimes you get new people in and they're not as familiar with the show. So it's, you're just trying to be his eyes and ears while he's not around.
So you wore a lot of hats.
Yes, I guess. But it was, again, it's all good because the more involved you are, the more invested you are. And I do think the shows that work, the shows that I like when you watch them, often just have a small group of people that are passionate about that project, and they all work on it all the time, and they're friends, and they all get along and work together, and that's what Teen Wolf was. We all loved it and wanted it to be as great as it could be, and but it wasn't a huge production by any means. There really was just a small group of people, a small crew, really, but we were very efficient.
That's very true. Tim, you and Russell were supervising directors on the show. What was it like with the two of you working together and then with our guest directors to kind of find to keep a visual continuity between the episodes without the show getting stale?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, Russell Mulcahy is one of my heroes. He's fantastic, right? I'd admired his movies and his music videos. He was the king of the music videos. He made all these iconic music videos that are still shown today. when MTV started out, and he worked with Duran Duran and Elton John and Rod Stewart, any big name group at the time. And when I've looked back on that or reflected on that now, and I realized that, he was always trying to make sure that every video he made was spectacular, but different from the last one. He didn't want to get stale. And he brought that to Teen Wolf as well, I think, because, we never set ourselves in stone like, oh, we always do, transitions like this, or we always do, I don't know, some flashback like this. We never locked ourselves into that, so that, season 1 and season 6 were different. They looked stylistically different. And for me, you just get more confident, or you get more familiar with certain things, and you like certain things, your tastes change, or you see, again, I'd see some other show, I'd see a movie, and I'd be like, oh my God, now I feel like everything I did, a few years ago is old fashioned. And that's sort of a cutting edge approach, and so we were both like that. And for me, I'd watch his episodes and I would be like, oh, that's so much better than anything I've ever done. I've got to improve my performance, my game. I've got to compete and match, or try to match, what he's done. So it was a good rivalry is not necessarily the right word, but it was a good sort of inspiration for me anyway, because it's that thing people talk about where if you play tennis with somebody, you want to play tennis with somebody that's better than you, and you get better yourself. It sort of like challenges you to think, to try harder. So I loved working with him as sort of like my teammate on the show. And there were times we really were literally back to back. And there were a few scenes where there was one scene I remember, I think, this is season 1. So like there's the bus sequence, right? With the alpha and everything. And we
Mentality.
had So we had 2 buses literally right next to each other, so that we could light both of them with the same lights. And he's shooting, scenes in his, and I'm doing bits and pieces. And the other bus we had one that was like cut in half, so you could sort of see under the chairs and see people. But I remember dragging people, like from one end of the bus to the other one. I'm sure they enjoyed it immensely.
Yes, so much fun. I'm sure.
I'm sure we took all the bolts and all the rough bits out of the bottom of that bus. But I'm not lighting myself very well here. So the sun's moving. I'm not normally on Zoom for this long. Anyway, so it was great, for me to have admired somebody as a filmmaker, him, and then get to actually work with him. And we would laugh, and it was just fantastic, doing that. And there was I don't know what episode it was or what we were doing, but there was some moment where I was filming some scene, and there was a black cloth, like a curtain behind me. And on the other side of the curtain, Russell was shooting something else. That was as sophisticated as we could. It was just so that, he could just so we could keep shooting and make the show as quickly as we could. And there was a moment where I bumped into him like back to back through this curtain. And I remember laughing, and him laughing on the other side, because we literally were working back to back on the show together as as teammates. So Russell's a good friend of mine. I love Russell, and it's one of the many gifts that Teen Wolf gave me, was to get the opportunity to work with him.
That's awesome. That's
Just
so cool.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Exactly.
Okay, so your daughters, Claire and Lily, both played characters on the show starting in season 4.
Mm-hmm.
And we now know that they taught Tyler Posey and Dylan O'Brien to fetch, so that's exciting. But what was it like working with them?
I loved it, every minute of it. That was a joy that this show gave me, because they've traveled with me all over on different jobs, because you get a job somewhere, New Mexico or Atlanta or New Orleans, wherever it might be, and so they would come with me, and they'd grown up on sets, but Teen Wolf was, it sort of hit them at their formative years, the 6 years of Teen Wolf, and so they loved the show and were very familiar with it, and then obviously know all the cast and everything. And we would go to parties every week with the whole cast, screening parties at Jeff's house, and they would come with me, and so they were there, and they would, when we're filming, I'm talking about these night shoots and everything, they're there with me. They're on a nocturnal schedule with me, and they've always been in there's a professional theater group near where we live, and they were always part of that theater group, even as young children. They were the only kids. It's an adult theater company, but they were the only kids in it. And Jeff came to see them in some of their shows and stuff, and obviously knew them very well from seeing them every day at work. And then he wrote their parts for them as a gift, which was fabulous, because they are good actors and they're filmmakers in their own right now, but so they got to be in the show that they had grown up with, and that was lovely for them. They're suddenly now acting with Dylan and Tyler in scenes and so forth, and I'm directing, and it was one of the very special, magical moments that I've had in my life, to be able to work with my children on the show that I loved, with everybody that I loved there. It was really special. You don't get that very often.
We would love to talk to them later if they're interested when we get to season 4.
I said to them today, I said, the only thing because they were like, oh, what are you going to talk about on this? And I was like, I'm really nervous about doing this, because like I said earlier, if Jeff wrote my script, I could. So I said, the only thing I know for a fact that I'm going to say is that I am going to volunteer you two to go on and do a podcast.
Wonderful. Yes, we'd love to talk to them at some point. That'd be fantastic, because
they will be far, far more interesting to me, because they were kids and they remember it all far more clearly than I do. I'm like, really? That happened? And they're like, yes, Dad. Yeah.
I'd really love to hear their perspective, like growing up on set.
Yeah.
And then becoming part of the show.
Yeah.
Really cool story.
Yes. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to take us out?
Yeah. Do you have any new or upcoming projects that you'd like to talk about?
I'm still finishing the last thing I was on, actually, which is an NCIS series, NCIS New Orleans. So I'm actually editing that as we speak. So that will be done soon. And as always in the film industry, the future is a complete mystery. I do not know. The only thing I know for certain is that my daughters they're making a horror movie, and I'm hoping they will employ me. So
that's awesome.
I'm very excited.
Put in a good word for me when you do interview them.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
I think we can do that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Hey, like we said, we love horror movies, so very excited for that.
Yeah, and we also try to, like, Calissa has a Twitter account that spotlights female filmmakers. So we also try to go out of our way to see horror movies made by women, and I think the genre really benefits from a female perspective. So.
Well, great. Well, they will be fascinated to talk to you about that, because they have made one movie already that is just coming out actually on Apple and YouTube and other places, and it's called Max and Me, and it's not a horror, thing. It's like a coming of age. It's a coming of age. It's like Teen Wolf without the werewolves.
Okay.
Awesome.
So just the teen then.
Just the teen. It's teen. So. Well,
we'll check that out too.
Yeah. Yes, we absolutely will. Well, Tim, this has been an amazing opportunity to talk to you. We are very, very grateful that you came on and shared some memories of working on the show that we all love very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, so wonderful.
Because I think this is going to be fun for the fans of the show, and Teen Wolf deserves to be celebrated. So thank you. I love the show, and I was hugely grateful to be part of it, a little part of it.
I think a little bit bigger part. A little bit bigger part. Yeah, you're a pretty big part. So 35 episodes. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, a third of the show. So fantastic. So. Well, thank you, Tim. And we don't want to take up any more of your time. So you need to get back to NCIS New Orleans, I guess. But thank you again so much.
Thank you so much
for coming on the show.
It's been a lot of fun.
Really great talking
fantastic.
to you.
So
best of luck with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim.
Have a great
we'll
rest of your day.
Yes.
Nice to see you, Will.
Great to see you. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Bye-bye.
Bye.